Paul's Former Occupation in Judaismos by Matthew Novenson. Matthew Novenson is faculty in the School of Divinity at the University of Edinburgh. His study of the original languages has marked his work with insight and allows him to take liberties in his conclusions that he likely would not come to with such confidence if it weren't for his ability to work in Hebrew and Koine Greek. Hermeneutical and exegetical approach. Matthew attempts to discover what disconnect may exist between Paul's use of Judaismo and current renderings in modern academia. Novenson acknowledges that the accept or standard interpretation of Judaismo has been Judean, in quotes, since late antiquity. He comments grammatically that Judaismo is an intransitive verb which cannot be done to someone else. One does it to themselves. And so a non-Jew taking up cultural elements of Jewish practice fits the parameters of those who can be said to Judaismo. There's a plot twist here as Novenson doubles back after conceding that Judaismo should be something that only non-Jews are able to do. He looks at the actual occurrence of the word in pre-Christian writings and finds that they all take place with Jews as subject of the verb. As a key phrase in his article, he says, use belies etymology. The usual pattern of looking to a word's principal parts to determine its use does not work here, according to Novenson. The earliest example discussed is in the Maccabees, in which Judah Maccabee is a champion of Judaism in a land that forbids him to remain faithful to his cultural inheritance. He is a Jew who is taking up arms against his enemy in a revolutionary manner. He is not compelling someone else to observe Torah. This is an advocate for, he advocates for Jews to simply be allowed to practice their religion in good conscience. Judaizo is the transliteration of the verb that is used for Gentiles to take up a Jewish manner and practice, while Judaismo is preserved as something that Jews take on as activists against oppressive forces, or perceived oppressive forces. There are several other words that stand in for regular Jewish tradition, practice, and custom. Judaismo is not used by Paul in any of these contexts, but is used in Galatians 1, where Paul is recounting his advance within his zealous Jewish learning and leadership. Paul is not saying that Judaism is a problem for Christians and should be resisted or oppressed, as the church has sometimes been active or complicit in doing. His previous life of zealousy, seeking to protect the Jewish way of life that he particularly prescribed to the harm of others, is more in line with Judaismo. Activists who were willing to introduce distortion within the church because they perceived a threat against their people from it are cause for Paul to become quite angry as they practiced Judaismo. Strengths and weaknesses of argument. All the occurrences of Judaismo in pre-Christian literature also coincide with Jews living in their Roman-occupied homeland. They are living as foreigners in their own birthplace. There is a nuance here in line with those who take a culture foreign to their dominant home culture. The Jews living in Israel during Roman occupation practiced Judaism, even though it set them at odds with pagan Roman practice. There is a level of activism within Judaismo that goes beyond someone practicing religions native to their fatherland. The action of Judaismo portrays a Jewish person practicing elements of Judaism in a countercultural manner. This lines up with Paul's aggressive brand of Judaism, in which he sought out Jews who worshipped Jesus as Messiah in order to imprison them. This forced practice of Judaism is at the heart of what Novenson sees in the word Judaismo. Novenson digs into the grammatical use of Judaismo and shows how it should act before he cites examples of its usage, which runs against what the grammatical detail he gave would expect with an intransitive verb functioning transitively. The action of the verb is transferable. He also follows the use of Judaismo to find clues to its meaning. He recognizes that etymology is not always a trustworthy guide when it comes to determining a word's meaning. Novenson also did well to offer a Greek word that would have been used to indicate that a non-Jew is taking on Jewish customs, and showed that it is different from the word Paul uses to describe his Jewish activism in Galatians 1. Practical ministry implications. It seems that the consequence of Novenson's work is that Christians should not harbor a negative view of Judaism and Torah, but should find nuance enough to see that when Paul speaks of Judaismo, he is referring to a radical brand of Judaism that looks more like forced conversion than apologetic invitation or love. This interpretation may have gone a long way in sparing the church from anti-Semitic hermeneutics, from Marcion to table talk.